Yes, well, my name's John, and I'm a talking bush. This is my grandson, James. He doesn't talk very much, except to ask questions, which is very convenient. What's very convenient, Grandpa John? See what I mean? Anyway, today is your lucky day, because in the interest of not having to tell this information to my grandson twice, I've allowed a film crew of human beings to film me as I teach James here about the wonderful world of nature. Now then, let's begin, shall we? In the world, there are a variety of trees, but they are most easily distinguished as belonging to one of two distinct groups: broad-leaved trees and conifers. Broad-leaved trees have wide, flat leaves, and usually are deciduous, which means that their leaves fall off in the time of year known as autumn. Conifers are trees that bear cones. Although conifers account for a minority of the existing tree species out there, conifer forests account for the largest and most densely populated forest in the northern hemisphere. Therefore, conifer forests are very helpful to humankind because they work as a carbon sink. What's a carbon sink, Grandpa John? Good question, James. A carbon sink is an area of forest that is large enough to absorb important and noticeable amounts of carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere, and thus reduce the effect of global warming. This is why conifer forests are so beneficial to humankind, because their habitat, the northern hemisphere, is also the habitat of automobiles and man-made pollution, which accounts for most of the carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere to begin with. Essentially, these trees absorb carbon dioxide and drastically reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This is why it is so dangerous for the health of the Earth when humans cut down trees. Anyway, conifers are evergreen, which means that they retain their leaves throughout the year. However, some broad-leaved trees are evergreen trees, and some conifers are deciduous. Being an evergreen tree does not mean that one's leaves never fall off. It simply means that when an evergreen tree's leaves do fall off, new leaves grow and replace the fallen leaves, allowing these trees to remain green and fully covered with leaves all the time. As a general rule of thumb, when you see a tree that reminds you of a Christmas tree, think conifer and evergreen. And when you see a tree with broad leaves that change color and fall off in the autumn season, it's a broad-leaved deciduous tree. However, some trees are not so easy to classify. Palm trees are broad-leaved and evergreen. They do shed their leaves, but at different rates, and never without growing new leaves simultaneously. Palm trees are a very special kind of tree. And they're not always trees, by the way. Palm trees can also be shrubs. They usually grow in hot climates. In many palm tree species, the trunk is covered with a dense network of fibers, compacted together into spines. This material consists of fibrous tissue of the leaf stalk, which in these cases persists after the decay of the softer portions. It is very characteristic of some palms to produce from the base of the stem a series of roots which gradually thrust themselves into the soil and serve to steady the palm tree and prevent it from overthrow by the wind. In modern times, humans use palm trees as a symbol of luxury, the tropics, and vacation. About the historical significance of palm trees to humans, a human actually wrote about this. He actually admitted it. His name was W.H. Barreveld. He said that had the palm tree, specifically the date palm tree, not existed, the expansion of the human race into the hot and barren parts of the Old World would have been much more restricted. The date palm not only provided a concentrated energy food, which could be easily stored and carried along on long journeys across the deserts, but it also created a more amenable habitat for the people to live in by providing shade and protection from the desert winds. So, on behalf of palm trees, I'd like to say to all the human beings out there, well, you're welcome. Black cottonwood trees are broad-leaved, deciduous trees. They shed their leaves in the autumn season. Unfortunately, black cottonwood trees are also known for shedding branches. Because these trees can grow to a considerable size, upwards of 45 meters, it isn't a very good idea for them to grow up in an environment surrounded by humans. Considering that black cottonwood trees also sow their roots deep into the soil, the best habitat for black cottonwood trees is a riverbank, where they can use their deep roots to slow down erosion and stabilize the riverbank, shed their branches as they please, and enrich the habitat of fish and wildlife. Douglas fir trees are evergreen conifers. Although Douglas fir trees display more diversity in appearance between each other than do most other conifers, they generally come in two different sizes. Coastal Douglas firs are the larger Douglas firs. They can grow up to 90 meters tall. Interior Douglas firs are the smaller Douglas firs. They grow up to 50 meters tall. Whichever Douglas fir you're dealing with, you can always tell it is a Douglas fir tree because of their unique cones. The cones that Douglas fir trees produce have three-pointed bracts on them, which many human beings believe look like the hind feet and tail of a mouse. Just remember that besides Douglas fir trees, no cone-bearing tree has the three bracts on its cones. Grand fir trees are evergreen conifers. These trees commonly grow in mixed coniferous forests with western hemlock trees and also with Douglas fir trees, as seen here. Grand fir trees are known as one of the most beautiful fir trees, able to grow up to 80 meters tall, always maintaining a stately, charming shape. The cones of grand fir trees are quite different from the cones of the Douglas fir tree. Unlike Douglas fir trees, the cones of grand fir tree do not grow on all the branches, and they do not dangle under the branches either. Instead, grand fir tree cones grow upright toward the crown of the tree and in an elongated barrel shape. When compared to the conifers, red alder trees do not have a very long lifespan. Whereas conifers can live for over 1,000 years, red alder trees typically live for around 50 years and grow to be 20 meters tall. Red alder leaves are oval-shaped with pointed tips and coarsely toothed edges that tend to curl under. The leaves stay green until they drop, unless there is ozone pollution in their habitat. Red alder leaves react to ozone pollution by changing color and developing burn-like holes. Among humans, red alder wood is considered the best possible wood for smoking salmon because it is even-grained and has a pleasantly oily texture. Red alder trees are excellent for re-establishing woodlands. The trees are used to reduce stream bank erosion, protect water quality, and enhance aquatic environments. Red alder trees can be distinguished from similar trees by the moss caps that grow on their trunks. Interlaced throughout this forest cover of red alder trees is the vine maple shrub. The vine maple has green foliage and inconspicuous green flowers with a moderate amount of conspicuous brown fruits and seeds. The greatest bloom of the vine maple is usually observed in the spring, with fruit and seed production starting in the summer and continuing until fall. Like the red alder tree, The vine maple shrub is used to reduce stream bank erosion, protect water quality, and enhance aquatic environments. In the autumn season, the leaves of the vine maple shrub turn a variety of colors, from lime green to a beautiful maroon color. Coexisting with both the red alder tree and the vine maple shrub is the common lady fern. Ferns are vascular plants, that is, they have internal tubes for transporting fluids. However, they reproduce not by seeds, but by spores. This places them in a position morphologically intermediate with so-called lower plants, such as the bryophytes, and the higher plants, such as the flowering plants. Because they reproduce by spores, rather than by seeds, they must have abundant moisture available for reproduction. Most but not all ferns are characteristically absent from drier locations. The lady fern is not the most powerful or important plant when it comes to reducing erosion or protecting water quality, but it is, alas, quite beautiful. Now this is one of my favorites. Rounding out the forest cover we're studying now, the red alder forest cover, is the Himalayan blackberry. The Himalayan blackberry is the largest and possibly the most invasive non-native variety of blackberries in the Pacific Northwest. It is a perennial plant that can reproduce from seed, root crowns, root pieces, and stem cuttings. As much as I may like it, the Himalayan blackberry does get a bad reputation for a pretty good reason. You see, Himalayan blackberry grows very rapidly, and as a result, it can replace native habitat that is important to plant and animal diversity. The plant can grow over 10 feet tall and over 20 feet long in a single year. But the good news is, when it is put inside of a forest cover like this one, which is filled with red alder trees, it's very difficult for Himalayan blackberry to be as invasive as it can be, because when it is established inside of a well-shaded area, Himalayan blackberry grows a lot slower. Ideally, Himalayan blackberry should live in a forest cover with a network of conifers, because these trees live for hundreds of years, have thick and sturdy trunks, and provide lots of shade. The Himalayan blackberry isn't so bad after all. You just have to make sure that it's planted in a place where there's a lot of shade and there's some kind of tree growing that's a pretty sturdy tree to make sure that it doesn't take everything else over. Pyrus pirifolia is a pear tree native to China, Japan, and Korea. The tree's edible fruit is often referred to as a sand pear. Despite being colloquially known as an apple pear due to its appearance and texture, the fruit is not a hybrid of the two. The fruits are generally not baked in pies or made into jams because they have a high water content and a crisp, grainy texture. The fruit tends to be quite large and fragrant, and when carefully wrapped, it can last for several weeks or more in a cold, dry place. Hey James. Yes, Grandpa John. What's red and delicious? Cherries. Well, that too. What are you talking about, Grandpa John? Strawberries. Strawberries succeed on a surprisingly wide range of soils and situations. Because of this fact, and the fact that they taste quite good, human beings grow strawberries commercially for both immediate consumption and for processing as frozen, canned, or preserved berries or as juices. Rich in vitamin C, the strawberry also provides iron and other minerals. From a scientific perspective, the tomato is a fruit, but many human beings prefer to think of it as a vegetable because of its appearance and taste. The fruit is a soft, succulent berry that varies in shape. In the United States, more tomatoes are consumed than any other fruit or vegetable. Humans love tomatoes. Unfortunately, a large portion of the tomatoes humans consume are bought at grocery stores that get their tomatoes from industrialized mega farms. These tomatoes are picked from the vine before they are ripe and forced to re-ripen extra quickly with ethylene gas, which also makes these tomatoes stay fresher longer. However, the health benefits of tomatoes are all but eliminated when they are grown in this manner. In order to reap the benefits of eating tomatoes, one must seek out tomatoes from local farms, outdoor produce stands, or even tomatoes grown in a human being's backyard. These tomatoes grow slower, naturally, and only when they are in season. One vine-ripened tomato contains over 400 milligrams of potassium. This is excellent because clinical evidence indicates that potassium has a very positive influence on the kidneys, whereby blood pressure can be substantially lowered. Green beans were first introduced by Native Americans to European colonists. As simple as they seem, there is more to green beans than meets the eye. The oval green pods of green beans are a powerful antioxidant when hot water is poured over them. Green bean pod tea is healthy for the skin as well as the body. Studies have shown that when one washes their skin with green bean pod tea, it works as a remedy for eczema, dermatitis, acne, poison ivy rash, cold sores, and similar skin afflictions. When enjoyed as a tea, green bean pod tea is useful for treating diabetes as well. Kale is a vegetable of the colder seasons, growing mainly in autumn and winter. Cold weather improves the eating quality of kale, but it is the hardiness of the vegetable that allows it to grow when others cannot. In any case, just remember that kale is a good source of vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin B6, calcium, potassium, copper, iron, protein, and just about everything else that makes a vegetable a vegetable. Prickly lettuce is a plant that is commonly considered a weed. The word weed is a derogatory term used to describe any plant that is deemed undesirable by humans. Prickly lettuce is considered a weed mostly because of its resilience. You see, James, prickly lettuce is one of the most widespread plants in the world. It grows in the temperate regions of all the major continents, often in places that are uninhabitable by other plants, like the small patch of dirt between two cement formations that this example of prickly lettuce is growing up in. Another interesting thing about prickly lettuce is that it's high in vitamin B. As a matter of fact, humans use prickly lettuce extract to add flavor to salads and soups. Now here is a weed that could be mistaken for a flower. Columia heterophylla is a species of flowering plant in the phlox family, known by the common name variable leaf columia. It is native to western North America from British Columbia to Idaho to Central California, where it grows in several types of habitat. As you can see, the variable leafed columia is a beautiful weed. It's very tempting to just call it a flower. If nothing else, it teaches us that not all weeds are ugly. The rose is an example of a beautiful flower. It is widely grown for its beauty and fragrance. Another great thing about roses is that they come in a lot of colors. Roses are about as popular on Valentine's Day as toys on Christmas or candy on Halloween. Especially in Western cultures, they are powerful symbols of romance. Albizia julibrisson, colloquially known as the pink silk tree or the Persian silk tree, is a species of tree native to southwestern and eastern Asia. The leaves are 20 to 45 centimeters long and 12 to 25 centimeters broad, divided into 6 to 12 pairs, each of 20 to 30 pairs of leaflets. The leaflets are oblong, 1 to 1.5 centimeters long and 2 to 4 millimeters broad. The flowers are produced throughout the summer in dense inflorescences. The individual flowers with no petals, but a tight cluster of stamens 2 to 3 centimeters long, looking like silky threads. The pink silk tree is widely planted as an ornamental plant in parks and gardens, grown for its leaf texture and flowers. The broad crown of a mature tree makes it useful for providing shade. The flower color varies from white to red. Variants with cream or pale yellow flowers are also reported. I have to admit, James, this is one of my favorite. Oh, bugger. When I said the red alder wood is considered the best possible wood for smoking salmon, I didn't mean the best possible wood for salmon who smoke, and that therefore it's good for smoking's sake. Hey, you stick! Stop smoking on that pink silk tree. I'm warning you. Okay, tough guy. I'm going to count to 3. And my grandson James is going to drench you wet with H2O. All right. 1, 2, 3. Well, I did warn you anyway. Good shot, James. Thanks, Grandpa. James, do you know why smoking is so bad for all life forms? No, not really, Grandpa John. I do know why it's bad for plants like us, though. But I don't know why it's bad for humans. Isn't it only bad for plants? Only bad for plants, heavens no, lad. But now that you mention it, I suppose we could discuss the adverse effects of smoking on humans first. I'll tell you what, though, I thought about this ahead of time. Because, see, being a bush as I am, I don't have a particularly thorough knowledge of the human body. So I've decided to let the human beings play an anti-smoking public service video for us to watch. It's from the 1960s. So if the public service videos are as good as the music was, it ought to be pretty well done. All right, here it is.
There are over 30 harmful substances in cigarette smoke, including alkaloids, arsenic, nicotine, aldehydes, and others. Many of these are deadly poisons. Of special significance is benzopyrene, which is one of the known cancer-producing agents. As the tobacco burns, it reaches temperatures as high as 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, and this process causes physical and chemical changes in the nicotine, tars, and other substances. Most of these products are gaseous at high temperatures, and they become part of the smoke that is carried into the respiratory passages and absorbed through the mucous membrane and the tissues. Foremost among these substances is carbon monoxide, which is the killer in automobile exhaust. In order to illustrate the harmful effects of even small amounts of carbon monoxide upon the body, let's take a look at the breathing cycle. When you breathe clean air, oxygen enters the lungs, where it finds its way to the red corpuscles of the bloodstream. The heart then pumps the blood to the body cells, which in turn utilize the oxygen. As you smoke, carbon monoxide, the poisonous gas we have mentioned, is attracted to the red corpuscles just as the oxygen was, only more strongly. These carbon monoxide molecules take over some of the red blood corpuscles, decreasing the capacity of the blood to carry oxygen to the tissues. In other words, they prevent the oxygen from reaching the red blood cells, thereby reducing the oxygen transportation by 5 to 15%. This is one of the reasons why the smoker cannot run as fast or as far as he could if he didn't smoke. Another bad actor in cigarettes is nicotine. Nicotine is an alkaloid and works upon the nerve centers of the brain that regulate the heartbeat and breathing. In addition, nicotine causes the small blood vessels to get smaller or constrict. There is substantial evidence that continuous smoking causes the small blood vessels to lose their elasticity, and this increases the possibility of heart trouble and blood vessel diseases. The heavy smoker smokes the equivalent of a cigarette over 6 feet long every day, or one about the length of a coffin. But among the real threats in smoking are the killers known as the carcinogens, the cancer-producing agents found in the tars condensed out of the tobacco smoke and deposited into the bronchial tubes leading to the lungs. And with a person's constant smoking day after day, the carcinogens build up a mighty force. From the bronchial tubes, the carcinogens move into the air tubes of the lungs, where they begin to antagonize systematically the cells of the air tubes. It is not known why the cells change and become abnormal, but they begin to grow and affect those cells around them until the victim finds himself hopelessly afflicted with lung cancer. A non-smoker has about 1 chance in 270 of developing this disease, while a man who continues to smoke 2 packs a day has only about 1 chance in 10. And 95% of those afflicted will eventually die from the cancer.
That was some video, wasn't it? Yes, it was, Grandpa. Well, tell me, James, what do you know about how cigarettes harm plants and nature? Well, it's quite a bit, Grandpa. You see, pollution caused due to smoking cigarettes is not confined only to the air or the body, but to some extent it is also responsible for polluting the land and the water. Every day, millions of cigarette butts are left on the ground. The cigarette butts end up in lakes and rivers. By mistake, fish and other water animals eat these buds, resulting in the death of these water animals. The remaining buds left on the ground will approximately take 25 to 26 years to decompose. The various additives and chemicals are leached into the soil, polluting the soil as well as the plants. Sometimes it is possible to determine the chemical makeup of soil. The hydrangea plant is a flower. The most notable thing about this plant is that the color of its flowers is determined by the pH balance of the soil. pH, of course, is an abbreviation for potential of hydrogen. It indicates the amount of acid or alkaline of a solution, measured on a scale of 0 to 14. The lower the pH, the more acidic the solution. The higher the pH, the more alkaline the solution. When a solution is neither alkaline nor acidic, it has a pH of 7, which is neutral. In acidic soil, pH below 6 will usually produce a hydrangea flower color closer to blue, whereas in alkaline soil, pH above 6 will produce a hydrangea flower that is more pink. During dry seasons, cigarette butts can even cause major fire, which is harmful for the environment. In 1 hour, a cigarette manufacturing plant requires almost 4 miles of paper for rolling and packaging of the cigarettes. Just to produce 300 cigarettes, 1 tree is being cut down. Energy and water is also being wasted on the production of cigarettes, and the chemical waste from the manufacturing unit is being dumped into the soil. Hence, it is clear that cigarettes are in total adding huge strain on the environment. Yes, it's very sad indeed, James, very sad indeed. Sadly, though, there are worse forms of pollution than air pollution and cigarettes. Oh, heavens no, are you serious, Grandpa? I'm serious, James. I'm quite serious, I'm afraid to say. As bad as smoking is, there's always a close cousin, fossil fuel. Meet an oil rig. This particular oil rig is an offshore rig. Offshore wells are drilled in much the same way as their onshore counterparts, with several allowances for the offshore environment. A conduit made from lengths of steel pipe permits drilling fluids to move between the rig, at the water's surface, and the seafloor. This conduit is called a riser. The riser is fitted with ball and slip joints that permit long string of riser pipe to move up and down and bend slightly with the wave-induced movement of the rig. Offshore oil rigs like this one are used by humans to extract fossil fuels from the earth. Fossil fuel, in turn, is put into cars. Burning fossil fuels in automobiles releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and accounts for rising carbon dioxide concentration. And this is where we have pollution. Grandpa. Yes, James. Besides being expensive and accelerating the greenhouse effect, is there anything intrinsically wrong with using fossil fuels to power automobiles? Well, James, aside from the fact that it is a depletable energy source that is indeed running out, I guess it wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for this. As it turns out, Sean Connery isn't the all-time best thing to come out of Scotland.
I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
At least, not anymore he isn't. Meet the Valamis Energy Converter. A technology that uses the motion of the ocean's surface waves to create electricity. The machine is made up of connected sections which reflex and bend as waves pass. It is this motion which is used to generate electricity. Developed by the Scottish company Polamis Wave Power, here's how it works. The Polamis Wave machine is an offshore wave energy converter, operating in water depths greater than 50 meters. So that's pretty deep then, eh, Grandpa? Yes, it's pretty deep, James. The machine consists of a series of semi-submerged cylindrical sections linked by hinged joints. As waves pass along the length of the machine, the sections move relative to one another. Electricity from all the joints is fed down a single umbilical cable to a junction on the seabed. Several devices can be connected and linked to store through the single seabed cable. The Polamis is an attenuating wave energy converter designed with survivability at the fore. The machine's long, thin shape and low drag profile minimizes hydrodynamic forces, namely inertia, drag, and slamming, which in large waves give rise to large loads. The machine responds to the curvature of the waves rather than the wave height. As waves can only reach a certain curvature before naturally breaking, this limits the range of motion through which the machine must move, but maintains large motion at the joints in small waves. Each Polamis wave generator has 3 power conversion modules that together generate 750 kilowatts of electricity. While the Polamis wave generator cannot solve all of humanity's energy needs, it does give a big hint as to what could. The ocean is the biggest thing on planet Earth. Approximately 72% of the Earth's surface is saline water. Because it is the principal component of Earth's hydrosphere, the world's ocean is integral to all known life. It influences climate and weather patterns. The total volume of the ocean is over 1 billion cubic kilometers, or 300 million miles. How deep is the ocean, Grandpa John? Well, the average depth of the ocean is over 3,500 kilometers. The ocean is the habitat to over 200,000 known species of animals. However, much of the ocean remains unexplored, so millions of other species of animals are believed to exist. The ocean is essential to transportation because most of the world's goods move by ship between seaports. Using the natural energy of the ocean is called marine energy, or marine power. You see, James, the movement of water in the ocean creates a vast store of kinetic energy in motion. This energy can be harnessed to generate electricity, to power homes, transportation, or even entire industries. The ocean is a great energy source because it is self-sustaining, natural, and can be used with less than a fraction of the environmental impact caused by drilling for fossil fuels. The consistency of the ocean's tides makes it one of the best sources for clean, natural energy because the future availability of ocean power can be known and planned for. Ocean energy is also good for animals. Observe these starfish feeding on this intertidal structure of blue mussels. In order to stay alive, Starfish pump water directly into their bodies. Because starfish have little ability to filter out the toxins and contaminants of water pollution, fulfilling humanity's energy needs with oceanic power instead of fossil fuels could make all the difference in the world. But even if the ocean was the main conductor of electricity, there's still some unfinished business between humans and nature. Land animals. Some land animals are very good at getting along with humans. Birds, for example. It helps to have webbed feet and a sturdy bill. These attributes, when combined with their strong wings, make seagulls one of the more adaptable birds. The only real difference between Canada geese and seagulls is that Canada geese are taller and like to travel in large groups. Crows are keen observers of human behavior. They are able to find water and food in the most difficult situations. For the very thrush to survive, it depends on the availability of a cold, foresty habitat with moist soil. The great blue heron frequents both fresh and saltwater environments. Small birds like kinglets and chickadees flit and flop from branch to branch, and often go unnoticed in the backyards of human beings. The northern flicker resides in conifer forests, but if forced out of its natural environment, the northern flicker will peck itself a home on the side of any wooden structure it can find, including a house. Like birds, mammals vary in their ability to coexist with humans. The golden retriever is a type of dog that has been domesticated, which is to say, it is bred for the purposes of getting along with humans. These dogs are well suited to suburban and country environments. Although they need substantial outdoor exercise, they should be kept in a fenced area because of their instincts as hunting dogs and tendency to roam. The golden retriever's intelligence makes them versatile, allowing them to fill a variety of roles, including guide dog for the blind, hearing dog for the deaf, hunting dog, illegal drug detector, and search and rescue participant. Because of their loyal and gentle temperament, golden retrievers are also popular family pets. Rabbits are a case-by-case mammal in terms of whether or not they are domesticated. These rabbits graze freely in an area that is surrounded by hotel rooms for human beings. Conversely, this rabbit is wild. It lives on the beachfront of the Pacific Ocean, finding its home among sand, seaweed, seagulls, and driftwood. Deer, on the other hand, seen here eating Himalayan blackberries, is not so fortunate. Deer are not domesticated. They also are not very good at coexisting with humans. This isn't because deer are violent or brash animals. On the contrary, they are gentle and graceful. But for one reason or another, deer have never been able to adapt to human environments or human inventions like the automobile. The fate of deer is at the mercy of human beings. Well, stop. Hold on, Grandpa. Isn't something being done about this? I'm so glad you asked, James. What's this, Grandpa?
CEOs and members of civil
listen.
society from across the globe will gather in Rio de Janeiro next month for the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. They're expected to take decisions and announce commitments on the reduction of poverty and inequality and ensure environmental protection on what the UN calls an ever more crowded planet. CCTV's Renee Delcam reports.
This year marks the 40th anniversary of the first major international conference focusing on the environment, and 20 years since the Earth Summit was held in Rio, hence the name Rio+20 in June 2012.
What we want to see on the table at Rio+20 is mainly a global understanding of green economy in the context of sustainable development, what that really means for the global community, so that we ensure that the actions that we take are aligned to a common vision for the world in itself. And secondly, we'd like to see tangible institutional frameworks to really aid us in implementation of our green economy ideals whilst we are transitioning in that direction.
Leaders at the Rio+20 summit are expected to set the sustainability agenda for the next 20 years towards identifying solutions and goals to tackle crucial global challenges. This includes a lack of access to energy and clean water, depleted oceans, food insecurity, widening inequalities and rapidly expanding cities. The question now is just how delegates from 193 countries will be able to reach consensus on crucial issues on the green economy and poverty eradication in the two-day Rio+20 summit. Renee Delcam, CCTV, Johannesburg.
Well, that sounds exciting. Can't wait to see how it turns out. I mean, it's... What's that? Really? What'd they say, Grandpa? Well, apparently, James, this news footage is old, and the Rio 20 event has already taken place. The film crew of human beings wants to show us some footage of the Rio 20 gathering of world leaders. Wow, that's awesome. Yes, it is. Thank you, humans. Well then, here we are, inside the lion's den, with some of the most respected and influential United Nations delegates in the world. Let's watch and listen.
Many companies worldwide are considering including sustainability as a key indicator in a new reporting system. Major accountancy firms are also thinking along these lines, though the details still have to be worked out. Now imagine that in 5 years' time we have sustainability rules similar to our present audit rules. International responsibility and coherence in development cooperation will then be a reality for the public, the governments and companies. This sort of accountability can only be achieved by working together. In other words, far more can be accomplished by joining forces than by individual players acting alone. Now, the conference in Rio de Janeiro gives us an opportunity to make agreements on sustainability. And let us seize it, for there is no time to lose. It's in everyone's interest to go beyond fine words and take concrete steps to enhance this sustainability. This is not a time for ifs and buts, it's time for action.
All right, that didn't sound so bad, Grandpa. You're right, James, it didn't. That's because he's telling the truth. But let's hear from another politician named Jean-Guy Carrière, a man who attended the first UN Earth Summit in Rio some 20 years ago, back when this little girl said this.
2 days ago here in Brazil, we were shocked when we spent time with some children living on the streets. This is what one child told us. I wish I was rich. And if I were, I would give all the street children food, clothes, medicines, shelter, and love and affection. If a child on the streets who has nothing is willing to share, Why are we who have everything still so greedy? I can't stop thinking that these are children my own age, that it makes a tremendous difference where you are born. That I could be one of those children living in the favelas of Rio. I could be a child starving in Somalia, or a victim of war in the Middle East, or a beggar in India. I am only a child, yet I know if all the money spent on war was spent on finding environmental answers, ending poverty, and finding treaties, what a wonderful place this earth would be. At school, even in kindergarten, you teach us how to behave in the world. You teach us not to fight with others, to work things out, to respect others, to clean up our mess, not to hurt other creatures, to share, not be greedy. Then why do you go out and do the things you tell us not to do? Do not forget why you are attending these conferences, who you're doing this for. We are your own children. You are deciding what kind of a world we are growing up in. Parents should be able to comfort their children by saying, everything's going to be all right. It's not the end of the world, and we're doing the best we can. But I don't think you can say that to us anymore. Are we even on your list of priorities? My dad always says, you are what you do, not what you say. Well, what you do makes me cry at night. You grown-ups say you love us, but I challenge you, please, make your actions reflect your words. Thank you.
Pretty powerful words, eh? Here he is, Jean-Guy Carrier. Look at that face. You'd have thought he'd never heard her speech, not even on YouTube.
My memory goes back to the Stockholm conference and to working with Maurice Strong and his team for the first Rio summit. I have to say I was quite young at the time.
So you do admit you were there, crafty Carrier. Well, wait to hear this speech, James. But first, remember that this UN Earth Summit in Rio is supposed to be about a future which reduces humanity's carbon footprint. Here, let's count how many times Jean-Guy Carrier says the word business.
The ICC, just to give you perhaps a clearer understanding of where I'm coming from in terms of what I want to share with you, is of course an international organization that represents business. We have as our membership a great number of multinational companies, but I think it is less well known and understood that 80% of the membership, the hundreds of thousands of companies in 120 countries that are part of the ICC network, are small and medium enterprises. They are really the heart of international trade, and they are at the heart of our membership. Now, over the last year especially, my colleagues and I have been, like many of you, unceasingly traveling the world, consulting with small groups of these business people on issues of the green economy, on issues of trade and investment and related questions, to garner their opinions and also to get their perspectives on some of the global issues which we are all trying to address. And I think that the same conclusion is drawn by the business community on the process of dealing with climate change, with sustainable development, with environmental issues at the multilateral level. That tariff and other trade barriers are a tremendous bother and are a tremendous cost and even a deterrent to being able to do even more on the business level in terms of what can be achieved in these areas. So these are very practical concerns that our members are telling us you have to flag and you have to address in some very precise policy proposals that we hope governments will listen to over the long term. We all have a perspective of what needs to be done on the grand scale, but I think again the business community is more and more focused on the practical step-by-step series of measures which can be taken by governments, by individual governments, and also collectively that will alter the situation in some practical way. It may move slowly, it may move glacially, it may move painfully, but we believe it needs to continue moving. And business is again urging us to underline the importance of that. We certainly are going to do it in terms of our capacity to contribute to the discussions you're having now and to shaping what will take place in Rio. But again, from the long experience that many of us have had, we know that Rio is another step. It is another vital step, but it leads to further discussions and to further developments which are on the long road to achieving some success. What I wanted to convey to you is simply again that the business leaders were meeting, and again, these are business leaders of a particular series of configurations, so not people who are easily sort of slotted as a particular kind of CEO or whatever. I mean, it's a great range of business people. And it is amazing to me the extent, as I go through these meetings and hear people express their concerns, the extent to which they are, in fact, engaged. They want to be involved, and they want to also make some views known that are very clear and practical, but they share mostly the kinds of convictions which animate most of us when we join in these meetings, when we follow this process, when we keep pushing for progress in the Rio process, in the various environmental discussions that we're engaged in. Though many of us have been engaged in these discussions, this process, and similar ones, parallel ones, for a long time, it is absolutely vital that it continue. It is absolutely vital that we continue to have some hope that it will lead to solutions, because frankly, there is no other way out. Thank you.
Wowzers, he said business a lot of times. I think he's in love with business. And that, James, is why people are protesting in Rio, because business interests must be kept out of the future of bushes, trees, resources, animals, and people everywhere. With politicians like Carrier, I think I'd rather hear what the protesters are saying about all this.
We've had 20 years of climate change. We've had 20 years of pillaging the oceans. We've had 20 years of deforestation. We've had 20 years of failing to enshrine the basic rights of all to water, to food, and to basic human rights. We've had 20 years where polluters have been given carte blanche to destroy our planet. Here in Rio, we, as civil society, reject this text. We reject this text because it fails to live up to the promises that were made to us. We were promised leaps and bounds here in Rio, and we've been given a document that barely moves us inches. We reject this text because it is a failure of ambition. It is a failure of vision. We reject this text. Mike Jack! Mike Jack! Mike Jack! Mike Jack! We are gathered. We are gathered to begin here. To begin here.
What are they so angry about, Grandpa? In essence, they're angry because of the exploitation of nature. In other words, using nature as a way to reap profits instead of sustain life. Oh, right. Here, let's hear a few words from a more experienced environmental activist.
these become issues of justice. I believe indigenous knowledge, and if you look at it neutrally in terms of innovation, in terms of sustainability, in terms of justice, in terms of building robust economies, indigenous knowledge is the option. It can't be put in a reductionist box. The demand that Ayurvedic drugs go through the same kind of trial systems that a hazardous drug goes through is totally unjustified. Nor should indigenous knowledge be put in the privatization box. I'm personally extremely happy that there's when I started this work 27 years ago, those of us who said biodiversity should stay in the common and the public domain, it was treated as something strange. Because everyone thought, oh, TRIPS has taken over intellectual property, now there'll be no place. Just worked with the Italian public, they've won a referendum against the privatization of water, 95%, in spite of Berlusconi trying his best to undo it. Around the world, the idea that large areas of our lives must stay in the public domain, whether it's at research or as issues of ownership, the public domain in water distribution, the public domain in biodiversity and seed, I think all these are issues of the future. We will go through a short time where there'll be intense contest because of the habit that has been developed by those who are used to exploitation to continue unjust exploitation. What are the consequences of patent monopolies, including piracy monopolies? First, the disappearance of biodiversity. We've seen that in the cotton area. 1,500 cotton varieties we used to have. We had one of the world's top breeding systems in the Cotton Research Institute of India. Since Monsanto came into the country in 1998, not one single variety has been released for the Vidarbha region by the Nagpur Institute, which indicates that deals are made. In addition, we've done a lot of studies on the seed monopoly in cotton. Today, 95% of the cotton seed is owned and controlled by Monsanto through licensing arrangements with 60 Indian companies. And these licensing arrangements basically compel the companies to not sell anything else but BT1 earlier and now BT2. So that's why the market has nothing else. And when people say, oh, but the farmers have a choice, I have to tell them the choice is gone. In a monopoly of that kind, the choice goes.
James, when I think of what Vandana Shiva said, I think of the common garden spider. In more ways than one, the garden spider spinning its web is much like environmental activists spreading awareness about the need for a sustainable, eco-friendly future. Both the spider and the environmental activists work very hard and risk a whole lot to accomplish their goals. And in the end, when they experience difficulties, it is not because of miscalculation or lack of fortitude, but rather because of an elusive force beyond their control. The only difference is the name of this force. For the spider, it is the wind. And for the activist, it's politicians and business people. I think I know what you mean, Grandpa. Environmental activists who protest because politicians and business people break their promises are like a spider getting frustrated because the wind destroys its web. Indeed. The question is, James, what can be done to combat corrupt politicians and business people? Meet David Suzuki and Severn Cullis Suzuki. Severn Suzuki was the little girl who silenced everybody at the first UN Rio Earth Summit, but now she's all grown up. Her father, David Suzuki, has been an environmentalist for decades. Let's hear what they have to say, ladies first.
Democracy Now! Spoke to her from Rio on Friday and asked her about what progress had been made since '92.
20 years have passed, and everybody wants to know, what have we done? How have we progressed? Well, last week, scientists released a report in the academic journal Nature that suggested that we are pushing for a tipping point in the Earth's biosphere. biosphere, that we are attacking our ecosystems that sustain us and all life on this earth in so many ways and so many levels, that we are pushing for a state shift like what was seen 12,000 years ago with the end of the last ice age. But this time it will be human-caused, and it will be orders of magnitude faster than the 1,000-year transition that happened last time. I mean, that report released on the eve of this World Summit is clear that we have not achieved the sustainable world we knew we needed 20 years ago.
Our problem, I think, is that, what we do then is we compound the problem with this economy by letting economists design measures that indicate how well our society is doing. A few years ago, it used to be the GNP, the Gross National Product. There are reasons why it was abandoned to the GDP, the Gross Domestic Product. And I won't go into the complexities of that, but it has to do with international trade. Anyway, the GDP measures any exchange of money for goods and services, all adds up. And boy, you know, governments and corporations live and die by what the GDP does from month to month. And everything is trying to drive the GDP to keep growing. But you know that the GDP is one of the nuttiest measures you can imagine, because it only adds. All it does is measure the exchange of money for goods and services. It doesn't ask why. So when there was an ice storm in Quebec a few years ago that knocked out electricity for some people for up to 6 weeks, it cost $1.5 billion to clean up the mess. The finance minister of Quebec a year later said, hey, the GDP grew by $1.5 billion. So the ice storm was a great boon. You know what? Fukushima, I just came back from Japan. Fukushima is a disaster you cannot imagine. But the GDP of Japan is going to have a huge jump. This is the nuttiest thing you can imagine. And things that are really important, like being a full-time parent, like volunteering, like helping out your neighbor without an exchange of money, those things are absolutely ignored, and yet they are the glue that keeps our society together. So what the hell is the GDP measuring? And yet every government, every corporation is going through contortions in order to keep that thing growing. Our problem is, I believe, at its heart, that we have adopted what biologists call an anthropocentric vision of the world. We think that the anthropo, us, we are at the center of the action, and everything revolves around us. And so we often hear speak of the triple bottom line, which is indicated by a series of circles. This bottom line is the environment, this bottom line is the economy, and this one is society. And they're all equal size, and they intersect, they overlap. And where the area of overlap is our opportunity to do things there that will benefit all three, the triple bottom line. This is the biggest hoax going. I mean, this is crazy. You mean the economy is the same size as the environment? You mean the economy is the same size as society? And yet that's what this whole triple bottom line idea indicates. There is another way of seeing our place in the world. It's called biocentric, that we are just a part of a much more complex web of living things, and we are utterly dependent on the rest of the web for our well-being and survival. And in a biocentric view, the way I would describe it is there's one great big circle, and that's the biosphere. That's the zone of air, water, and land where all life exists. And inside that big circle are about 10 to 30 million smaller circles of different size. And they overlap in different ways. So those are the species of plants, animals, and microorganisms that inhabit the biosphere. Unfortunately, one of those circles within the biosphere now occupies 40% of the area of the big circle, and that's us. We have now taken over 40% of what's called the net primary productivity of the planet. All of the solar energy absorbed in photosynthesis by plants, we have either co-opted by taking it for us or destroying the ability. And as we do that, we drive countless species out of existence. But that's the reality, the big circle, then the smaller circles, and within the 40% that's us, the economy should be a much smaller circle. That's the reality, and when you look at it that way, you see that the human society circle has got to be shrunk way down, and the economy has got to be shrunk much, much more. We've come to think that the economy is everything, and that its well-being is what we are dependent on. And we must have growth forever in that economy if we are to stay healthy. And we forget that the economy is not the end. The economy is just a tool. It's a means to something else. We've come to act as if the economy is the be-all and end-all, and everything must service it. It reminds me of the generations in the past that believed in dragons and demons. And man, they thought they were real and they would do anything just to keep them off their backs. And now we treat the economy, another human invention. We treat it the same way people treated dragons and demons. We think it's real and, oh my God, we've got to keep serving it and keeping it growing. If we don't keep it happy and growing, we're in deep trouble. The economy is just a means to something else. What does it mean to be a Canadian? What are we proud of? And what do we want Canada to be in 30 years? Then we should be asking, how the hell do we get the economy to help us realize those objectives, rather than throwing everything out in order to keep this economy growing forever. There's a book that I'm just about finished now that I urge all of you to read. The book is called, What is an Economy For Anyway? And it poses a lot of fundamental questions about this crazy economy. We are caught up in a delusion that the economy, this flawed human construct, is the center of our existence, that we must serve it and keep it growing forever, which is not possible. But in order to do that, we want to cut social services. We want to, and all of those services that help us live happier, healthier lives, we want to cut these in order to serve the economy. Somehow, it seems to me, we've got everything ass backwards here. I'd like to end my talk with just two personal stories. Tara and I, my wife and I, have lived in the same house in Vancouver, in Kitsilano, for 35 years. In the 1990s, this must have been the 1980s, before Hong Kong reverted to China, we got a letter from a real estate agent, and it said, this is in the 1990s, it said, offshore money is pouring into Vancouver. Now is a good time for you to sell your house and buy up. I'd never heard the expression buy up. I thought you got a home and you stayed in it forever and passed it on to your children. I didn't know. It's just a starter home and we got to get a bigger one or something else. I mean, what a crazy idea that is. Really kind of pissed me off when I got this letter. But I thought, okay, I live in a very wonderful place. I'm right on the water in Kitsilano near the kids' pool, and I thought, if I were to put this on the market, what would I put down as the things that give that place, my property, its value? And the first thing I did was I put down the fact that when we bought the house, I couldn't afford it. It was $135,000. And I asked my father and mother-in-law to kick in some money and said, I'll move you in when you retire. And I did that, and Grandma and Granddad have lived upstairs for my children for their entire lives. And I put that down as high value. My father was a cabinet maker, and when Tara and I were first married, he built a kitchen cabinet in our apartment. When I bought this house, I ripped out the cabinet and put it in our kitchen. It doesn't fit at all, but every time I use that cabinet, I think of my father, and I put that down. And under the dogwood tree in the back, my children have dragged roadkill off the street. You know, there are snakes and birds, and we buried our pet dog there, and we have an animal cemetery in the backyard, and I put that down. And when my father-in-law is an avid gardener, and he knew that I love asparagus and raspberries, and he's planted a little patch of raspberries and asparagus just for me, and I put that down. And as I began to make this list, I realized those things that make this more than a piece of real estate or property, that make that place my home, those are priceless to me. And yet on the market, they are worthless. And that's one of the problems we have with this crazy economy. The things that matter most to us have no value. We've got diverted off into a world in which we think stuff, in which we think this economy is the source of everything that matters. And I would say we've got a lot of change needed, and the big change that happens has got to be in our heads. It's got to be in the way that we see the world and our place in it. And then we begin to change our behavior and those things that we can change. Is it too late? I would never say that's too late. Indeed, right to the last minute, I would not say it's too late. But it is very, very late. And the challenge and the solutions, I believe, lie in our brains. And there are huge opportunities that lie in this global eco-crisis. We simply have to seize the moment and then get on with it. Thank you very much.
There's a man who is down and needs a helping hand. All it takes is you to understand and to pull him through. Seems to me we got to solve it individually. And I'll do unto you what you do to me. Said no. Shouting from the mountains on out to the sea. No two ways about it, people have to be. They got to be. Ask me my opinion will be. That's a situation for a man to be free. Get right on forward now. That's the train of freedom. It's about to arrive any minute now. You know, it's been a long, long overdue. Look out, cause it's coming right on through.
Summertime and the trees are dancing, all of them happily. Fall into the leaves of autumn, let's make a pile in the street. Wintertime and the water's frozen and snow falls gracefully. Spring out flowers bloom and blossom, help us all to breathe. And everybody needs a home. The mallard, the kinglet, the seagull. But who can say if it all fades away? Then where will we go? And greed pollutes the human sight. The mighty ocean presses on. Birds of the air are losing their homes, 'cause we're cutting trees to the ground. Berries ripen and bring forth fruit, but still some lacking what they need. Years from now, when the earth grows weary, what will be here to see? 'Cause everybody needs a home. The mallard, the kinglet, the seagull. But who can say if it all fades away? Then where will we go? Yeah. And everybody needs a home. The mallard, the kinglet, the seagull. But who can say if it all fades away? Then where will we go? Where will we go? Everybody needs a home.
Well, now that says most of it. This is the rest of it. We have fed you all for 1,000 years, and you hail us still unfed. Though there's never a dollar of all your wealth, but march the workers dead. We have yielded our best to give you rest, and you lie on a crimson wool. That blood be the price of all your wealth. Good God, we have paid in full. There's never a mine blown skyward now, but we're buried alive for you. And there's never a wreck drift shoreward now, but we are a ghastly crew. Go and reckon our dead by the forges red and the factories where we spin. Then blood be the price of your cursed wealth. Good God, we have paid it in. We have fed you all for 1,000 years. For that was our doom, you know, from the days when you chained us in your fields. To the strike of a week ago, you have taken our lives and our husbands and wives and called it your legal share. Then blood be the price of your lawful wealth. Good God, we have bought it fair.